Okay, so we've datamed the machine. What I've done interim is I've gone to go fetch the paths that we wrote previously. I've popped them in the USB in the machine and I've copied the two paths over onto the desktop. I tend not to try cut off the USB if I can. If anything goes wrong with the USB, you lose a cut. Again, never happened to me, but it can't hurt to have a safe practice. So copy them onto the machine, get the USB out and put it in there. I'll do a bit more, like I said in the last video, a bit more advanced how to set up Windows so that the USBs don't go to sleep, the machine doesn't go to sleep, and it doesn't try to do updates halfway through a cut. So with those on the desktop, I'm going to press the tab key on the keyboard, open the jog controls in Mac, because we're about to start setting up our work holding, our work positions. Alright, so I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to load the G code, and you'll remember that we wrote a roughing and a finishing. I'm going to start with the roughing for now. So that's the part loaded up in the window. And now we're going to go zero out our X and Y so that we can get the machine going. Now with the tab control open, the buttons are X, Y, page up and down is Z. Now be careful, it moves the cutter in that direction, which means the table, because the cutter stands still, the table moves in the opposite direction. You're always moving the cutter. You've got to get that around your head. So I'm going to bring the cutter down so I get a little bit of a closer idea of what it is I'm doing. I'm pressing page down to do that. Now to illustrate what I was talking about, I'm pressing go right. The cutter is going right, but in fact the table is moving left. Okay, so be careful of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over to more or less the middle. You can remember that I scribed a mark in my part. It may not show nicely on the video. And I'm going to go find it. There it is there, and I'm going to bring Z down a little bit. So what I'm looking for here, and I'll see if I can zoom that in for you. So I'm trying to get the middle of the cutter over the middle of my scribed line. I think you can just see the scribed line there. So I'm going to do this just very roughly for now. It looks about right to me. When you want to move in smaller increments, you can go into Mac, and in the tab control panel you can say I want to move at 50% of the speed or even 10% of the speed. And when you now jog, you jog a lot slower. Okay. Okay, so that's more or less where I want to be. So remembering this is X. Okay, so X is now where I want it to be. I'm going to go into Mac and I'm going to zero out X. Oopsie. There. So now my X is zeroed out. Now I want to do the same thing for the Y. So I'm going to move that over my Y line because it's across the grain of the wood is a lot clearer to see. And again, same thing. So a little bit difficult to do while you're trying to shoot video at the same time. That's about it. So now same thing. I'm going to go up and I'm going to zero out Y. Okay. Then we've got to zero out Z, which is we've got to bring this cutter until it's just touching the wood. I like to go a little bit under, just in case when this wood was made it's got a bit of a slope to it or any other factors that I haven't factored in. So I'm going to drive it over. I'm going to turn up my jog rate a little bit. Turn the jog rate right down again. And zoom. Now the reason I'm doing it here is because I'm going to take it after it's touching the wood. I'm going to take it down a little bit in the empty space that's over there. Now you'll have to apologize, but this thing is struggling to get in focus. Okay, so I'm going to jog that out and jog it down. You can see that there it's actually touching the wood. I can feel the cutter is biting. Okay, so I'm going to jog it over just a little bit more. tap it just a little bit down in Z, and then I'm going to come zero out Z. Where is Z? There. Okay, so now I can set my jog rate back to 100%. Pick Z up out of the way. I'm going to zoom back a little bit. And we're now ready to start cutting. Okay, so what we look at, the next part we look at is in your screen, it's going to tell you your maximum and minimum datums in the panel underneath here. So it says from your 0 point, you're going to go 49 mil under X and 49 mil over X, in Y 32 in either direction, and Z down 12. Okay. So if we bring that down to more or less our center, which was there, I should have 49 millimeters of movement in that direction. So let's move over 49 mil. That means the last place that cut is going to be is there. All right. And the same thing in the other direction in X. It doesn't hurt to double check, okay? So I'm going in the other direction. Even at 50, I'm safe. All right. Now you can do the same thing for Y. So in Y, I've got 32 mil in either direction. So I'm at 31, which means my final cut is coming a little bit out of the wood. It's not a problem. I've cut it like that on purpose, simply because we know that we've got that little safety barrier on the edge. All right. So now we're pretty much ready to start the cut. So I'm going to get myself back to more or less my center datum. I'm going to pick Z up out of the way. Now I like to test that the spindle relay is connected before I start any cut, so I just hit the little spindle button. You should expect the spindle to fire up, which it has done. I'm going to turn it off, and just when I get going, I set my actual feed rate. So the program feed rate for this cut is 600 millimeters a minute. I take it right down to 10% to make sure there's nothing stupid going on when I start the cut. Okay. So that's 60 millimeters a minute, and when I hit the go button, it's going to be moving at a tenth of the speed it should be moving. If I see it doing something stupid like going off in that direction or somehow moving incorrectly, I've got enough time to catch it. After it's actually in the material, I'm moving 2 or 3 passes, and I see that it's doing what I'm expecting it to do, I'll start cranking up the feed rate. All right, so that's go moment. We're going to hit the start cycle button now, which is going to start cutting that G code. All right. You'll notice my finger is over the escape button. Pause that path if anything's going wrong. And yes, it's annoying. It's moving really slowly up to its first point. Down, and we'll start cutting. Now what I'm looking for is if it's doing any ridiculously deep plunges. And that spindle sounds like it's struggling. I might jack it up a few RPM. Appears to be doing what it's supposed to be doing, so I'm going to start jacking up the feed rate. So feed rate currently is quite low. Always keep compressed air near me. The other thing to be looking for while you're doing the roughing, in the case of wood especially, is an issue. Is the wood very brittle? Are the chips coming out clean? Okay, jack that up a little bit, and we'll come back to this once it starts cutting more passes.